Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan, and of course, training camp has started because we are joined by InsideTheBirds.com's Andrew DiCecco, host also of the DiCecco Daily Podcast on Inside the Birds. So between all of us three, we get you covered with training camp, Eagles training camp, like nobody else. And so, fellas, we're only 2 practices down as we record this podcast, and no pads, and practices have been between 75 minutes the first day and a little longer the second day. So a lot of this podcast, right, we'll go through some observations, but also any intel that we've gotten along the way and things that might be less X's and O's oriented and more big picture oriented. So there's a lot to talk about. And the cool thing is, Andrew, you're going to be at pretty much every single practice. I'll be at alternating practices. Adam will be at alternating practices. So we'll have, a diversity of viewpoints each time we do a pod here. And Andrew, we're going to try to get you involved in these as much as possible throughout camp.
Yeah.
Good. So I just want to start off big picture, just because the Eagles got some good and bad news, I guess, health-wise, as they started camp. The really good news was Jihaad Campbell being way ahead of schedule, being out there, limited participant for the first 2 days. I would juxtapose that, though, and I want to start with this also. Kenyon Green, who's definitely on a prove-it year for him, trying to, A, be a first-round pick, and B, just win right guard and be a productive player on the 53, not even ready at the start of the camp, missing the first 2 days for the knee. Adam, we'll start with you. Which one is a little bit more on your radar, moving the needle one way or another? Campbell being back or Green not even being out there the first 2 days?
Campbell being back. I mean, it would, even if Kenyon Green was healthy to start camp, we kind of know it's Tyler Steen's job to lose. So it's a shame that he's dealing with this knee issue. But the big thing is Campbell's a minimum of 2 weeks ahead of schedule. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And with Nakobe Dean's situation, as you noted a couple months ago, the feeling around the team is he won't be back till sometime in October. We now have to start talking about Jihaad Campbell potentially starting week 1 versus those Cowgirls as an inside backer. That absolutely is in play right now. That I don't like to make is, hard statements after 1 or 2 days. In fact, I usually wait a week until we start making some evaluations of hard information, of hard news. But that's one thing you at least have to talk about, is that he could be starting week 1. It's absolutely in play right now.
All right. I'm marking this down. July 24th, 2025. Adam sounded a little bit like an Eagles fan there, calling him the Cowboys. Now, Andrew, I thought just watching Campbell after 2 practices, and you saw both, I saw one. My thought was, I'm really just looking for how this guy is kind of moving on the field. We already know he's got a whole playbook and position change somewhat ahead of him. But just as far as fluidity, movement, instincts, what did you see?
He's listed as limited, but I mean, from my vantage point, it looked like he took every second team rep alongside Smile Mondon Jr. the last 2 days. Yep. You see the range, you see the length, and you see that he finds a knack for being around the football. I thought yesterday, I guess it would have been the first day of training camp, he made a nice play on a crossing route to Danny Gray. Gray had a step. The ball probably could have been a little bit better, but he got a hand in there, and you see the wingspan and the length, and he deflected the pass away. He had a tough one today. He was trailing Jahan Dotson on a crosser. Jahan Dotson's going to come out with that every time. Great pass from Jalen Hurts. But, yeah, this is a player that I think is going to make an early impact for this football team. He's ahead of schedule. And you heard Vic Fangio today kind of allude to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I made the same observation you did. I'm like, why are they considering him limited when it seems like he's out there with the second team every time? My guess is that because the pads aren't out, and maybe there are a couple of things, individual drills that maybe he didn't do. I don't know, as they take it easy on the shoulder. But limited in this case carries a whole different connotation than our normal understanding of what limited means.
Remember with limited.
By the way, talking to Zach Bond yesterday after practice, he noted that, he missed some time in the spring, which was significant, but it doesn't look like he's that far behind. He mentioned that after day 1.
That's good. That's really good. And remember, with limited, it just means less than what they would normally have scheduled for you.
Right.
And again, because he didn't really practice in the off season, he was taking mental reps. I remember watching him, but he was allowed to do certain movements, and you could see he's like mimicking because it's like his knees were fine. That wasn't the problem. He just couldn't take any contact. So you take the mental reps. Now you apply them to what he learned. Now you got it. Now, we didn't think we'd be talking about this early. I mean, you got to start talking. Okay, let's see how this progresses. It's at least in the conversation now, and we'll see the way the rest of camp looks for him.
Right. And Andrew, you've been noting in your daily observations on InsideTheBirds.com that everybody should check out. That's your understanding that both with Campbell and Cam Jurgens, who's also been limited, it's more like it's a pitch count, right?
That's what it is. It's all part of the recovery process. So it's a natural progression. Awesome.
Great. Let's start with offense, just as we make some observations here. There's no pads out. Adam and I talked about this in a recent pod, and you actually wrote it too, Andrew, is that, with A.J. Dillon coming off of missing a year from the neck injury, stinger-related nerve, that it would be smart to actually get him a little more action and in the non-pad practices and just see how he responds. You have to crawl before you walk with this kind of injury. And it stuck out to me in the second practice that he got a lot of carries for what's usually a passing camp. And Andrew, I imagine, and Adam, that this is what they're doing. They're just trying to make sure that this guy can at least get through the first barrier of a comeback, which is, can you get some carries? Can you get a little bit of, I don't want to call it thud, but there is some contact there. You got to get through the hole. And can your neck respond positively to that? Adam, we saw with Rashad Penny, like they gave him work, and that we just never saw him, really manifest into what you thought he was going to be. But I think with Dillon, you got to at least get him these reps and see where he's at physically.
When we get to the second week is when you could do the practice could be a little bit heavier. It's not so much how long they practice; it's what they actually do in practice. The heavier practices happen starting week 2. It shouldn't take more than a week to know if Dillon's back. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that look like? It's a big dude. The thighs are huge. Shipley's got the juice. They need volume from Dillon. If Barkley can't play, as much as we all love Shipley, he's explosive. Nobody has any idea how much volume he could have. This is a volume running offense. We didn't know that quite like we would learn last season. It was a crazy volume offense and running, and they're not going to change, not as long as Barkley's here.
Yeah, Andrew, I know Dillon is not he's 260 pounds. He's not like a guy who's going to look like Saquon Barkley when he was running with the ball. Although Barkley's
is he 260? He won 260, wasn't he?
250? I'm sorry, 250? I thought he was.
He's probably like 250.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
250? Jeez.
Yeah, so just watching him run does not look I mean, again, it's just OTAs, but I wonder if he himself is a little bit just going at 70% speed as he tested, because when he did get the ball and you saw him run, it wasn't like wasn't what you typically see from a running back.
No, but to your point, I think revving him up and getting some tread on the tires ahead of the pads coming on, they're probably trying to gauge where he's at. I did think he looked a little springy, and I guess that's all relative when he burst through the hole. But yeah, I mean, he has a clear-cut role. We've talked about it. I mean, in a perfect scenario, he would be the closer or somebody who would fill in for Saquon should he have to miss any time, because we know that he can handle volume. The question now becomes, how is he going to bounce back from missing a season with the neck injury? We're going to learn a little bit more in the coming weeks.
All right. So let's talk a little bit more about big picture. Right now with Jurgens on a pitch count, you're seeing Brett Toth getting some first-team center reps. I mean, Jurgens is still doing some too, but then he comes out, Toth comes in. Drew Kendall, second-team center. In your estimation, both of you guys, how long do you think before Kendall is considered the number 2 center? Because we haven't seen any issues yet in 2 days, but we know that Toth is not a guy who snaps the ball well.
Probably next week. I would imagine
that early. Huh?
Seriously, though, I mean, they drafted Drew Kendall to be the backup center, and in a perfect world, that's what he's going to be able to do. Take answer the bell and prove that can be the backup center. Brett Toth, we've seen this play out several different summers. He's the veteran. He knows, he's familiar with the players on that line. So he gives you some stability in the interim, but eventually I think that he'll get leapfrogged by the rookie.
Yeah. And Adam, I think Toth was playing second-team left guard. I mean, they literally just put him wherever they think they need a body at that moment. Brett Toth, he's played every position.
I know. Literally, I'm assuming both guard spots. I've seen him line up at both tackle spots over his 6-year career on and off the Eagles roster.
Yeah.
One thing with Drew Kendall is, and this is from a scouting standpoint, because I know a friend of mine who has this area said, he's really not a guard. He's not strong enough and not the greatest athlete in the world, but he's got good hands. He kind of knows what he's doing. Ideally, there are some other guys you probably would want to be the backup center. He was just saying in general, because this guy works for another team, so he wasn't talking about, he didn't know anything about Brett Toth. So I said to the dude, trust me, they want Kendall to be the 2. Mm-hmm. But he said, it's something they're going to have to learn over time. You can't just pencil him in. He's not that good. There's a reason why he was a 5th-round pick. So we need to get there first. But I would say this. If they're not happy with Drew Kendall, I would assume they're going to look outside the roster. You can't think Brett Toth is 2.
Right. And by the way, Trevor Keegan is the 3rd-team center, and Trevor Keegan repped at center at the Senior Bowl, and he can play all 3 interior positions. Important. So I think that's something to keep in mind.
Watch that, because Andrew, you mentioned that a couple months ago. Let's watch that, because I know teams were not looking at him as a center, but that doesn't really matter. Once you get the NFL, if this offensive line coach, Jeff Stoutland, thinks you can do it, as we've learned, no one in the National Football League thought Mekhi Becton could play guard, okay? No one except that guy, and he was right.
Now, interestingly, I don't think Keegan took any center reps, even in practice last year. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure he only played left guard. So it'd be pretty interesting to see his development there. All right, enough O-line talk. Everybody else is hell. One of these days, I want to write a story for Philly Voice, if I can. I don't think we think about this, but if you're a guy like Kendall, right, or a guy like Miles Hinton, or even Darian Kennard, who played like every single snap of 2 preseason games last year, you might actually be a pretty good player, but you almost have 0 shot of ever playing on the Eagles' offensive line unless somebody gets hurt, because they are that talented from left, right to center. I mean, like, you're a 5th-round pick offensive lineman. You got a shot to make a 53 or even start for a lot of teams in the NFL because offensive line play is so bad. But you come to the Eagles and you're hoping to put good film on and hope that someday you can get on the field. But think about the likelihood of it. Like Mailata misses very little time. Lane Johnson misses very little time. Dickerson's 3 Pro Bowls in now. Your right guard, your center just made the Pro Bowl in Juergens with an extension. Really, only right guard is open. And, if Tyler Steen claims it, he claims it. So it's an interesting dynamic where I think most guys who are in their 1st and 2nd year who have some talent have a pretty good shot to see some time if they're playing for a different team. But that's for down the road. I wanted to talk about the offense in general. Adam and I, Adam probably gets tired of me always saying that for 20 years of covering this team, I would say at least 15 to 17 of those years, the defense is ahead of the offense. There's been a couple of years where the offense was ahead, but I've only seen one practice. Andrew, you've been to both. For me, it looks like the offense, and it would make sense, right? The offense, almost everybody's back. The defense is trying to replace half its starters, but the offense clearly so far looks like it's been more rhythmic, and Hurts looks like he's in really good comfort with Brown, Goddard, Smith, and even Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, you haven't really seen a lot of explosive plays, but you've seen the timing and the accurate throws from Jalen Hurts. Yesterday's practice, day 1, it looked like Jalen and A.J. Brown were in midseason form. Pitch and catch, you can see the work that they put in off the field to make sure that's all dialed in. Jahan Dotson, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert had some nice catches today. So, yeah, that offense is as it should be. It seems to be humming. And the defense, which obviously has a lot of new pieces, they're working there to establish an identity.
Yeah, Adam, I would actually say, just from my own observation, I mean, Andrew talked about the crossing pattern that I think Devontae got hit on a crossing route between the numbers that was just past Jihad Campbell, right? And he hit Goddard between 3 defenders. It was a beautiful pass and throw down the left seam between the numbers. I felt like I saw more between the numbers throws and completions from Jalen Hurts in this one practice than we might have seen all year. All we ever talk about is how amazing it is that he can win games and throw for all these touchdowns without throwing between the numbers. I don't know if that was intentional, but if that's a development, that's a pretty good one for him and for the team.
So someone who worked with Kevin Patullo told me that his offense will be a little bit more West Coast based than Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore, no, his one of the reasons why he lost his job with Dallas was because Mike McCarthy didn't run the Kellen Moore system. He basically told the truth. He didn't when Mike McCarthy got the head coach job and he inherited Kellen Moore, he had to give up the play calling because Jerry Jones told him to. He didn't have they run completely different systems. Mm-hmm. Now you go to Philly with Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore runs a different system than Kevin Petula and Nick Sirianni ran. So there had to be a happy medium. Now Kevin Petula is running the show. Kevin's going to tweak from last year. You can't completely change it. It's not fair to Hurts. But there's going to be, you always know, every play caller has his own finishing touch on it. So on what you just said, I'm going to look for that when I'm at Saturday's practice, and we all three of us will. Do we notice is Hurts thrown a little bit more inside the numbers? Is there anything different from the route combinations? There's going to be differences. We got to call it out when we see it.
Well, here's the thing. Last summer, there was a lot of that, and there was also a lot of passes to the running backs, and you didn't quite see that carry over into the regular season.
Well, 2 years ago, we didn't see it at all. Remember, we saw Swift, Andrew? Geoff was there. There was one practice. Swift might have caught 15 passes. We're like, oh, this is it. This is what we're going to see. And we never saw it. So you never know.
But that's a good point, Andrew. Like, and plus, we have the defense. So for those who have never been to training camp at the NovaCare complex, the way they practice on the middle field for reporters is that we generally see the backs of the defense and the offense coming at us, right? Mm-hmm. So it's hard with the defense in front of us to really see the offensive alignment. Like I was trying to see if Jahan Dotson was lining up more in the slot or more outside, or if they were just, reduced splits, a type of different offensive alignments because he was catching a decent number of passes. But it was difficult to see. So it's just something that you have to kind of micro in on when you're there. But he did look in rhythm. And so to my point, it seemed like a lot of those throws were between the numbers and on target. But I don't know if, per se, it came against man or zone or looks that they normally see. We know one of the issues last year for Hurts earlier in the season is like guys were right there in a zone and open, and he would not throw it to them. Or A.J. Brown on a comeback on the even outside, and he wouldn't throw and he would go somewhere else. I mean, at least for these practices, you see him getting rid of the ball.
Yes, definitely. Just getting the ball out of his hands and making, smart decisions with the football. The football rarely hits the ground with Jalen Hurts. I think today there was the Will Shipley drop in the flat, and then the play in which Zach Bond got a hand in to break up a pass to Devontae Smith.
Right, and I don't think there's been an interception or a turnover yet in camp. Was there one on day one? No. All right, so that's good. Good for the offense. So offense ahead of defense. Why don't we talk about the defense? First, we're going to pause real quick because you have to hear a word from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, when you go into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, please be sure to tell them that you know Adam and Geoff, because you will get a great deal. Heck, tell them you know Andrew DiCecco too. You'll get a great deal, and you will not only get a great deal, but the greatest car shopping experience that you can imagine. Awesome customer service, awesome inventory. Definitely worth your browsing time on SkyMotorCars.com. All right, defense. There's a lot of different storylines on defense. So what did you make, Andrew? We'll start with this. The cornerback spot. There's two things to talk about here. One, there's Quinyon Mitchell and the fact that he's not just lining up at right corner. He's playing both right and left corner. And Vic Fangio talked about, which surprised me, his history of occasionally playing cornerbacks in following, shadowing.
Traveling, yeah.
Yeah, traveling with the number one receiver. And then obviously you had Adoree Jackson starting on day 2, where it was Ringo on day 1. What do you make of that, Andrew?
Well, I'm expecting that all through the preseason until someone emerges. So on day 1, Keely Ringo had a tough day. They gave up a deep shot to Terrace Marshall on a really perfectly placed pass from Tanner McKee. And then he gave up one down the other sideline to A.J. Brown on what was like a jump ball from 20 to 25 yards out. That was a classic case of Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown knowing where each other was going to be or where to place the football. There's not much Keely could have done. He also got out-muscled on the sideline by Terrace Marshall, who used his body to kind of shield him off. and really, pluck the football away from them. So today was Adoree Jackson's turn with the first team, but Kelee Ringo got most of the 7-on-7 reps opposite Quinyon Mitchell. So I'm expecting a lot of that mixing and matching throughout the summer.
Yeah, and Adam, you've talked about, the idea that this thing could look like a competition for the first couple of days like last year, and then all of a sudden Rodgers was the guy. So we've got a lot. We'll glean a lot more in the next coming days. I'm actually more fascinated by Vic talking about the idea of traveling Quinyon Mitchell. Not that Quinyon doesn't deserve it. He was great last year, but Vic plays so much zone. I almost think that's sort of an approach that's a lot of coordinators don't want to take because they're not trying to telegraph their defense.
Well, we'll ask Greg Cosell this, but we know there are bottom 5 man team. They just don't play a lot of man. That's the Fangio system. This is the way it is in terms of what their philosophy is. But to me, it's real simple. If they could just get enough quality play from whoever starts opposite at right corner, this defense still could be good. Now, the other part of it is, and Jalen Hunt, who may not be on the field a lot of rush times because Ojulari's been on the field a lot so far, but if their pass rush is good and the right corner guys just hold the fort down, you don't have to be great. The defense, I'm not saying it's going to be as good as last year, it'd be very hard to, but the drop off that some people think, and I get the talk because you've got at least 5 different starters, maybe the drop off won't be as steep as people think it is. But again, we've got through 2 practices. We know DeJean's going to be on the field just seemingly maybe every snap. It seems like Vic Andrew is going to figure out a way to make sure he's on the field. And by the way, he's doing it because he's maybe one of their top 2 or 3 best defensive players.
Yeah, absolutely. He was safety in base again. Obviously, they're not in base hardly ever. A very small percentage. And
8 to 10 plays a game, yeah.
Yeah, this is the second consecutive day where he was getting he opened practice as the safety opposite Reed Blankenship.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if he's actually going to be a base corner at all. Because remember that first OTA or second OTA, it was corner in base that he started playing at, and then everybody made a big deal of it. And then the last OTA, it was safety in base that he was playing at.
He did say, now if you really listen to him closely, he said something which I've been telling the Patreon people for 2 months. Don't just assume that if the cornerback position, the right corner position doesn't work out well, that they'll look outside the organization. It's not out of the question. They play DeJean a lot more at corner than they anticipated if it doesn't work out with the other 2 guys.
Right.
Because remember, they did draft him to play corner. I know they've moved away from that for the most part. It's Cooper we're talking about. But it's not out of the question that he winds up being the right corner. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but let's not just assume they're going to look for make a trade. We know how he's got 13 picks. They got to do something with these picks. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people just assume, they'll just do what they did with Darby a couple years ago. Yes, that's absolutely in play, but you got to get through this thing. People make a lot of assumptions after 2 days.
Yes.
And you got to be careful with that stuff. Again, Campbell's the one thing I would say, him being back early, he's going to get a lot of reps at inside backer. You have to start talking about it because it's real.
Yeah. Did you guys get a sense just listening to Vic, who I think you can get a sense of how he feels about certain guys on how he says things, that he's sort of intrigued by Mac McWilliams, who has been practicing at both slot and outside? Andrew, did you kind of your radar go up?
I jotted that down and I underlined it, and because that was, on the heels of a practice where I thought Mac McWilliams, and it was only a handful of snaps, so I didn't put it in my observations, but I thought he did a nice job as the backup nickel to Cooper DeJean. I'm curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for the exact phrasing in the you know how Greg Cosell, Adam, would say that a player has something in his body or has something there. That was kind of like how Vic described. He said something like, "We need to really find out about him," or something like that. Yeah, we'll look for it and we'll find it. But I'm glad you used that terminology because I kind of did the same thing.
He has a chance to play corner, and he's playing nickel right now. I just kind of jotted down some quick notes as he was talking.
Yeah, no, look, they were gonna cross train him anyway, but the way that he said it, I think you're right. He seemed to be intrigued. Vic's a guy you could read into a lot, like what he's thinking. Now, again, like he didn't want to criticize anyone in particular, but he just laughed, he chuckled. You heard him talk about what some of the players said about Hunt, comparing to Michael Parsons, all that. It's just not right. You can't. And the thing is,
that kind of pressure on somebody,
right? Not only that, I mean, Hunt may not playing it. He may not be he may be just a base down player. He may not be playing in nickel at all. Who knows?
Yeah.
Because Ojulari is a better pass rusher. He just is. As of now,
refined. Yeah, absolutely. And Mac McWilliams, here's what Vic Fangio said. This is a direct quote. Quote, Mac is a young player that we like. We think he can play the nickel position. Think he's got a chance at corner. He's an interesting guy here that these next 4 or 5 weeks to see how much the progresses and see if he finds a role with us. I mean, that's not like dismissive statement. He basically said, we're liking what we see both in 2 spots, nickel and corner, and these next 4 weeks are important from here. So I do feel like the wheels are turning in their mind, that to what Adam was saying. Like, if Mac McWilliams, if they can feel he can play it at a decent enough level to continue what they do on defense at the nickel, then maybe we see Cooper DeJean play outside if they're not comfortable there. I mean, I know we're far, but the machinations are there. You can see it happening.
Sure.
By the way, there's an up for Mac McWilliams. Look at it. Who would be the backup nickel if Mac McWilliams wasn't here?
Parry Nickerson.
Parry Nickerson's a journeyman. He's here because he knows the system. He's not a great athlete. He's an older player, but he's been around. He's a journeyman. Okay, he's not a short of a spot.
Yeah, but that's even a cheat. Like, who would it really be if it was week 5? Because Parry Nickerson's not making the 53. So
maybe Makuba probably.
That's what I would think.
He can do it. Good point. He can do it, but right now he's not quite doing that yet.
Right.
At cornerback, we want to talk in Vic Ease at cornerback. Not nickel. Nickel's not a corner. It's a defensive back. At cornerback, if it's not Jackson and it's not Ringo, who is it?
Eli Ricks. I mean,
no,
probably not. Yeah, no.
This staff doesn't clearly showed you last year. He went from being maybe one of the top backups for the team when they first got here. As soon as they got their hands on him, down.
Yeah, but that's the only other.
Also, I will say this. I agree with what you're saying, Adam, but they had to make a lot of bottom roster moves last year, and he stayed on the team the entire year. So I'm
like
sort of
they kept that.
Reconcile. Right. Yeah, I'm trying to reconcile that they didn't love him enough to play him, but they didn't hate him enough to cut him either.
Yeah, but it's not Vic's call. Vic does not have personnel control. Howie does. It's Howie's decision. How he kept him.
But Howie could have moved and didn't want to. So I
think they do. I think they like him a little bit, but he's a cover corner. He can't help him on special teams. Otherwise, he was only active for 7 games. And in a numbers crunch like that, it could make some things interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's really uphill here. I mean, when you start counting defensive backs and you get to 8 or 9 before you get to his name, then it's going to be really difficult. All right, so let's sort of close on this here. This is going to be a fun one. Are we buying or selling? Well, let's first point out the facts. The facts are that Jordan Davis, I saw it with my own eyes. I mean, he looks like a totally different human being. He is down 36 or 26 pounds to 326 pounds. He's at 330 pounds, the lightest he's been, I think he said, since he was a sophomore at Georgia. And he said, I made this change for 2 reasons. One, for life, because he's kind of acknowledging that being north of 350 is not healthy, even off the football field. And B, he said, I want a bigger role. I'm tired of not, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, I don't want to be off the field anymore on 2nd and long and 3rd and long. And I'll add to this that Vic Fangio was asked about Moro Ojomo stepping in for Milton Williams. And Fangio himself said, yes, but those snaps will probably be made up by a conglomerate of people, including Moro, Jordan Davis, and Ty Robinson. So you got to see it to believe it, guy. Adam, are you buying Jordan Davis, at least right now, being in contention to see more pass rush snaps?
No. I
love it. I knew you were going to say
no, because that's not what he is. He could weigh 290.
Right.
He could be 270. He's never shown the ability by technique to be able to rush the passer. Now, if he does it, we'll call it out. We'll see it. And hey, you know what? Boy, he had some really quality rushes when we were, because typically the way I go when I go to training camps, I take 2 positions, and I'll glance at others, but I take 2 positions. That way I feel pretty strong about what I saw. Well, obviously we'll check in with people and see what they saw, but it's just he's never shown it. I mean, like you saw the great pass rush where Derek Carr was running for his life. It's great in week 3. Yeah, but he's just not that player. So it has nothing to do with weight. I'm going to bring it home again. It's about technique,
right?
When it is very, I don't want to say nothing, but very little to do with his weight. It's about using the proper technique. Now, later in the game, because of his stamina, when he's too heavy, sure, he gets sloppy. but he's never shown the ability to really rush the passer.
Mm-hmm.
So to move this along, I want to talk about Terrace Marshall before we get out of here because we've got.
Oh yes.
But finish this off on defense. I want to because I have a good nugget on Terrace Marshall when we're done.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. I'm skeptical until he actually shows it. But some of those things that you're talking about can be improved and refined. And Andrew, if he were to really take the coaching and learn how to use his hands, learn how to use his body, learn how to play with leverage, I still think it's tough for him because he's battling against career pass rushers, interior rushers like Ty Robinson and Moro Ojomo, who've been doing it that way for their entire life. But you never know. I mean, they're clearly picked up his fifth-year option. They want to see it, and the coaches said they felt they were seeing it at the end of last year.
Yeah, you saw it in the postseason. Look, is he going to be a 5-6 sack a season guy? That's not what he is. Adam outlined that. He's more of a run-defending tackle, but I think he has a little bit more in him than what he's shown. And the Eagles are certainly banking on that. Jordan's taken this elevated opportunity very seriously. He's showing up in shape. Last season he was as well. He wants to play more. I don't think he's played more than 45% of the snaps in any of his seasons at the pro level. And the Eagles are certainly banking on him being able to make that leap.
Let me add this. It's not so much sacks. Sacks are literally individual plays. I'm looking for pressure rate. Get your pressure rate. Make the quarterback move. Sacks, they're great if you get them. Just make the quarterback move. That's a win. That's a win. That's what NFL people will tell you.
Right.
If you make the quarterback move, you won. That's all you need to do.
Right.
He's capable of doing that to a certain extent, but it's got to start with a technique. It's been mostly not good enough. I'll be nice about it. That's the truth. That's from a football stick, because I can tell you, you've taught Geoff and I have talked to a lot of the same people. We also talk to Greg Cosell on a weekly basis. Greg has been Jordan Davis's harshest critic because it's all from the tape. He's also been he's gone out of his way. Hey, I want to talk about what Jordan Davis. He looked really good this week. I want to make sure we talk about it. He just tells you. He only talks about what the tape tells him. That's it.
Yeah, and that goes back to Georgia, where he observed that, as he phrased it, Jordan Davis is a power player, but not a strength player. Meaning he has power, he can stalemate you, but he doesn't displace and move people consistently the way you would think a man built of his size and stature would do that. And I always thought that was a really good, kind of colorful description for people to be able to visualize. Nothing stood out to me from day two. I mean, I thought he was. I'm not going to judge him off one practice when they're not in pads, but nothing really jumped out to me other than his post-practice press conference.
Give it a week or two. You got to give it a week or two.
Yeah, I know. And I think it's a little fair as an organization to sort of be disappointed that it took this long to hear him say, I'm dedicated to losing this amount of weight. I want to be out there on second and long, third and long. That should have been like after year one when you got hurt and then they had to bring some other guys in and things like that. So, I mean, better late than never, but I'm sure the organization would have rather heard him say that, 2 years ago as opposed to now. All right, so that is that's our
Terrace Marshall. Want to talk about Terrace Marshall?
Yeah. I was just about to segue to Terrace Marshall. What do you got?
Cool. So basically, the book on him from when he was with the Panthers, he was a flash player, and then he would disappear, and they got frustrated with him because he just could not be consistent at all. You could see the obvious talent. He's long. He could run after the catch really good, and then he'd disappear, and he looked like a sixth-round pick instead of a second-round pick, right? I think it was a second-round pick.
Second-round pick, yep.
Right. So he's looked good so far. He had a good spring, by the way. So this might be like he's on his way to being maybe look the best he's looked as a professional in terms of all-season program. But, again, we've only seen 2 practices. The offseason's done already. He's got to bring it. But, there's a wonderful opportunity for him here. They have no depth at receiver, really. It's Dotson's a 3. 4, 5, and 6 are taken. People want to put Johnny Wilson on the roster because he's a good blocker. Okay, that's fine. But Terrace Marshall, no offense, is way more talented than Johnny Wilson. He's just not a big, giant body like Johnny.
Yeah, I would say that Terrace Marshall is that guy you want to watch. Like, in between the first and second preseason game, after your body's been through a lot of practices, a preseason game, are you bringing it the same way that you were in the first week? Dawkins used to talk about this all the time. Guys would look good in shirts and shorts, and then the pads come on. And it's not just the pads coming on. Then it's a couple of days of the pads being on and the bodies colliding. Like, are you still that dog, 2 weeks in when it's 100 degrees in August, and so that's the guy we're going to watch and say, was that the flash that Adam's sources alluded to, or is this guy actually stringing together a really good set of practices and finally living up to what he's going to be? What have you observed between him and Anias and anybody else, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I went into training camp with Danny Gray highlighted, but it's been Terrace Marshall that has caught my eye. Really consistent when the balls come his way. Got vertical a couple of times. Strong hands on the sideline, as I mentioned, prying it away from Ringo. And yeah, I mean, Jalen Hurts has talked about him. He's praised him. A.J. Brown has said that someone like Terrace Marshall can make the wide receiver room uncomfortable. That was his word, and he said that that's a great thing. And Devontae Smith has also sort of gushed about him. So he has some support there and some familiarity. So I'm looking to see if that can carry over.
All right. Great stuff. Anything else? Any other observations? Andrew, you're always good for a special teams observation. Are we too early in camp after 2 practices to make a special teams note?
Avery Williams was back returning kicks today. And
that was weird that he didn't do it on day one.
He didn't do it yesterday. Van Sumeren looks like a wrecking crew, a one-man wrecking crew.
He's healthy, right?
He's
fast.
Healthy,
Andrew, right?
He's fast, and he's aggressive. And then I might say, like, if you want like somebody to look at in the preseason, that probably isn't a household name, Taylor Morin, the wide receiver from Wake Forest. He was returning punts with a small group of players yesterday or day one when the Eagles were. It was Anias Smith, Cooper DeJean, Taylor Morin, and like Giles Jackson, I believe. Not even Avery Williams.
Nice. All right. Any early candidates for training camp darling? It was like Shunderick Powell. I saw had a nice little run up the middle right there. Come on.
One of our buddies, I won't say who, they had him on the pre-camp 53-man roster.
No.
I promise you.
Wow.
I'll tell you.
One heck of a story.
No training camp darling just yet. I think we have to get a week to it.
Oh, early for that. Okay. Just making sure. All right. That's going to do it. How about we do this again next week? After another couple practices, we round it up. I love this. This is going to be awesome. All right. For Andrew DiCecco and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. This has been Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.